Once the electrical operation of the stepper motor is checked and eliminated as a reason for malfunction, the mechanical operation of the valve must be checked. While the configuration and operation of a three-way valve will vary between manufacturers, makes, and models, each will have one inlet and two outlets. Using this model-specific instructions, force the three-way valve operation to provide refrigerant to the compartment evaporator or evaporators with the issue. If one or both of the evaporators have little or no frost pattern, any component between the compressor and evaporators could potentially cause a restriction. Now this includes the filter dryer, three-way valve, capillary tube, braze joints, and check valve on some models. If the other possibilities have been eliminated, the following steps will help you identify a non-functional three-way valve. This is an example of a 2012 LG manufactured Source 795 Kenmore. The inlet to the three-way valve is from the filter dryer, and there are two outlets for the capillary tubing to each evaporator. On this particular model, the refrigerator compartment evaporator port is identified with a small blue sleeve on the tube. The other port is for the freezer evaporator. Visually check to confirm the stepper motor coil is correctly positioned on the three-way valve. It must be seated completely onto the valve. This one has tabs that are used to position and fasten the coil to the valve body. It is important to diagnose your particular model design as having a restriction before proceeding. A three-way valve that is not allowing refrigerant to flow through it properly is considered a restriction. With the refrigerator plugged in, force the three-way valve into the recommended position of open to both ports using the model-specific instructions found on the service documentation, and then unplug the refrigerator. Note that Samsung models using a three-way valve will typically not have a means to open the valve to both ports. Follow standard company procedure to recover the refrigerant charge. Cut open and inspect the dryer contents and outlet screen for signs of contamination. If the system has moderate to major contamination, it is recommended to replace the three-way valve versus trying to clear it. This is one reason for the importance of a complete diagnosis on the first trip. If contamination is minimal or non-existent, continue with the following checks. The remaining troubleshooting steps require these tools: the process tube adapter kit and the backflush sight tube. If you do not already have these, see your manager to request them. Isolate the low side and follow the purge procedure to establish clear capillary tubing before continuing. This illustration shows a connection for the initial procedure on a single evaporator model. However, complete instructions are available in a separate bulletin. If unable to clear, determine if a replacement heat exchanger is available. This is an important step because if you are unable to establish flow through the capillary tube or tubes and it is not available for a replacement, this refrigerator should be processed as non-repairable before any parts and additional efforts are invested. The remaining steps are used to determine if the three-way valve is functional. Before cutting any tubes, you may want to notate which port is which, or take a picture to be sure you reconnect them properly. Cut the tubing to all three ports with the next steps in mind. To establish flow through the three-way valve, braze an access port tube with straighter valve removed onto the three-way valve inlet. Attach process tube adapters on the two outlets. Following tests require your recovery equipment to be configured for backflushing as described in detail in a separate bulletin. Connect your manifold gauge set, low and high side hoses to the process tube adapters as shown. Add the backflush sight tube to the manifold gauge set center port. Connect the sight tube to the recovery equipment which has been configured for backflush recovery. Connect liquid refrigerant with tank valve open and hose hand valve in closed position to the brazed-on port. Close the manifold gauge set high side and low side hand valves. Open the refrigerant hose hand valve and look to see if the high and low side gauges rise quickly to tank pressure level. In this scenario, with the three-way valve in the home position, both ports should be open and both gauges should have registered tank pressure. With pressure showing on both gauges, run the recovery equipment with the manifold gauge hand valve still closed in order to create a partial vacuum and zero the refrigerant scale. Open the manifold gauge high side valve for a few seconds and watch for liquid refrigerant to flow through the sight tube. Close the manifold gauge high side valve after confirming flow at the sight tube or 2 to 3 ounces have registered on the electronic scale. Repeat the process for the other port using the low side manifold gauge and hand valve. If either port did not flow through, or if there is no means of opening both ports together such as with Samsung, reconnect the three-way valve harness if previously unplugged, and unplug the compressor circuit. Open the manifold hand valve for the port that did not have flow previously. Plug in the refrigerator and monitor the sight tube, pressure gauge, and refrigerant scale to see if at any time during the power-up routine the three-way valve port opens. If it does, the valve is functioning and it just may not have been open during the previous test. Repeat for the other port if needed and then unplug the refrigerator. Close off the refrigerant, force the three-way valve in the home position once again, and recover all remaining refrigerant from the three-way valve and manifold gauge set before disconnecting your equipment. Take caution when removing the hoses to ensure no pressure remains in any of the three-way valve tubes. Reconnect all tubing if the three-way valve passed the tests. Use heat trap paste to prevent heat damage. Replace the three-way valve if any of these tests failed.